Question 19. In the UK in 2000, 25% of the population were under 24 years old, 50% of the population were under 37 years old, and the interquartile range was 32 years, the oldest person was 107. Show the information on a box plot. So we need to have some understanding of how box plots work. So the general form of a box plot is a bit like this. This represents our lowest value. This line here represents our lower quartile, which is sometimes called Q1. This line here represents the median, which is sometimes called Q2. This line here represents the upper quartile, which is Q3, and this value here is the highest value. So we need to work out all of these before we start drawing, so it might be a good idea to just maybe list what these are. Q1, Q2, remember, which is our median. Okay, so we know, looking at the question, that 25% were under 24. Now, what we need to remember is that, box plots can look quite different. So I could have a box plot that perhaps looks a bit like that. Okay, so what is always the same, however, is the fact that this first section here is worth 25% of the data. So this section here is also worth 25%. So it just means that the data is much more spread out in this example than this one. The next section, which is this bit here, is also worth 25%. The next section is also worth 25%. And the next section is also worth 25%, making 100% of the data. So everything's included. So when it says things like 50% of the population were under 24 years of age, we're starting here at the lowest value, going up to 25%. So this line here is 25% or less. And so, when it says it's under 24, this line here is actually going to be 24. So we can say Q1 is 24. So I'm going to write that down. 50% of the population were under 37. So 25% add 25% makes 50. So 50% were under this line here, which is the median. So that's 37 for the median. Now the next one, it says the interquartile range of the ages was 32. The interquartile range is the upper quartile minus the lower quartile. So it's this size of the box here. So we know that the box size is 32 years. And because we know that the lower quartile was 24, if we did 24 add 32, which is the interquartile range, that would then take us to Q3, which was what we need to find out next. So let's put that into the calculator. No point making mistakes and losing marks when it's a calculator paper. So Q1 was 24 and the interquartile range was 32, which takes us to 56. So the upper quartile is 56. We're then told the oldest person was 107, which just leaves the lowest value. Now, if you think about it, we're dealing with ages in the UK, all right? And 25% of the population were under 24. If you think about babies, newborns, the youngest person would be 0 years of age. So that's where we're going to start at 0. So we're going to draw a box plot now. For this, we're going to need a ruler and also a pencil, ideally. I'm going to do this in pen because otherwise it might not show up on the camera. Now, with this, it's not a particular rule in terms of how far above the line it needs to go, but it does need to be clear. So I'm going to start it on the line here, and I'm just going to go up half the square and down half the square here. So let's have a look. I want to do my lowest value first, which is at 0. Q1, which is at 24. Now, there's 5 squares here, and it goes up in 10, so that means that 10 divided by 5 is 2. It's going up in 2s each time. So 22, 24 is this line here. Next one was 37. 40, so 2, 4, 6. 37 is halfway between the boxes, so it is important to get that really accurately. Q3 is 56, 2, 4, 6 here. And the highest value is 107, so 2, 4, 6, 7. Again, it's between the boxes. Just like that. So I just need to draw this out initially, and then I can draw the box plot. So I'm starting off with these 2 lines because that's the end parts here. And then I'm going to draw my box here. So as long as it's clear, it doesn't really matter how big you make the box. Don't touch the axes. Just keep a little space above it. And this one goes through the box. I need to make sure my line goes through the box. Okay, so that's my box plot completed. Now in part B, it then asks us to think about this situation. So it says it's predicted that by 2050, the age distribution in the UK will have a lower quartile of 66 years. Just to remind you, the lower quartile before was 24 years. The median, which was 37 before, is now 44, and the upper quartile is now 66 when it was 56 before. It says make 2 comments about the predicted age in the age distribution in the UK from 2000 to 2050. So when we're making comments and comparing box plots, you need to make a comment that concerns the median. And we also need to make a comment regarding the interquartile range. So generally when we're comparing sets of data, we need to talk about a range. So it could be a range or interquartile range, as will be for box plot. And we need to talk about a comparison to do with the average. So with a box plot, the average we're using is the median. So for example, if we look at the median, we can see the median will be bigger in 2050. So, we can talk about that. So we say the median is bigger. And just relate that to the question. So, it just means that the average age, remember the median is an average, will be 7 years higher than in 2000. Okay. Comment 2 regarding the interquartile range. So if we actually look at this, interquartile range for 2050 would just be 40, whereas the interquartile range before they said was 32. And that was in 2000. So we can see the interquartile range has got higher or bigger in 2050. So we can say that. So the interquartile range, and just for make it shorter, I could just call it the IQR, will also be higher. And this basically means that the age distribution, so how spread out the ages are, will be bigger. So that just means it will be more spread out. Okay, so that will give you your 2 marks. So we've said that the median will be bigger, and the interquartile range will be bigger too.